Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, for most of you who haven't slept. It's a good thing that we're all in nice, comfy positions to be ready to doze off halfway through. So happy to be asked to be here, especially with the other two people I'm surrounded with. To be considered in that same group's an honor. But I understand that when I do present something, I was talking to Heath earlier about not wanting to be a full-time preacher, and I like the part-time job that I have. One of the perks is that whatever I talk about is something I really want to talk about. But that's why I picked this one this morning. Importance of edification. I have some questions there for you to consider for the outline when you take it home. But I'm going to kind of give that of my story and my background when it pertains to those questions. So I was adopted age 1, brought in by my family from North Carolina and brought into Ohio. I have an older sister. I think only one of you knows of her or has met her. So it was just me and her growing up for the longest time in Youngstown. If you can see on the map, I'm kind of on an island by myself. So for the longest time, we grew up as the only two kids in the congregation. We were the gems. Everybody loved us. Still do, at least me. But we were the only kids for a while. And then after some time, luckily, Uncle Bobby, who most of you know, 90% of you, who is my actual uncle, for those, because people still get surprised by that. He moved and started preaching at our congregation, and which was great. We had more family, and we had Wayne and Ashley, who most of you know. They're my older cousins. The thing is that they were much older than me. They were near my sister's age, but I was still a little kid running around half the time, and they were doing their own thing. Then after a while, the firm showed up, which was nice. So it was the firms and the scriptures that I had, but they were still older kids compared to me. And then by the time that I got to the end of middle school, high school, the scriptures had moved away. And then the firms, Ryan stuck around when he was, living with his mom until he was 25. But, he still left by the time that I was, in high school. So I really had no one else around me. And, so most of my time was spent in middle school and beginning of high school. I did a lot of sports. And then I did a lot of band, and then I did a lot of speech and band. So, a lot of the friends that I had when I was growing up, we had the 1 week, of camp every year. But other than that, I didn't really have a great connection with a bunch of people. And at that point, Facebook was just getting started. I had just got my phone, I think, my freshman year, and even then I don't have most of your numbers now, much less then. So communication was tough. And, I live on the island, as I said. There's congregations about an hour west of me. I try to go visit, as when I can when there's a gospel meeting. A lot of kids there, but, it was kind of, I was visiting, and I never really established great friendships with those people either because they were an hour away, and it was really tough to visit them, having to have my parents drive me there, or, one of the few times that I drove myself, my car ended up breaking down, so that stopped happening for a while. So I grew up, with a 1 week a year of camp, being having these great friends. And I think of the fact that I was lucky enough to have that being started when I was 8 years old. There are other situations where people don't have that, and people grow up, and then you watch them fall away, and that just kills me, and it kills my heart that all the connections that they had were worldly connections. And they don't have great spiritual friends and connections, and that's a struggle for people. When you go out into the world and you have to finally answer questions as to why do you believe what you believe, and finally having to stand up for yourself and to be the only one there is terrifying. So that's why we're going to look at why it's needed. For those who have limited positive connections in your life. Now you may be thinking that might not apply to you, which it might not, and that's terrific. You are surrounded by people. You've been put in the best scenario. And, whether it's you have been homeschooled and you don't have to deal with the worldly connections. I went through public school, but after doing 4 years of music education, I'm all for private school, or for homeschools and private schools, because I can't stand public schools anymore. And I see how terrible they can be. I was lucky enough when I had my science classes that I had a lot of old teachers. Like, they would retire the year after I would go through. And they were all like old school, old way of thought, and refused basically to teach evolution. I always heard about these people pushing evolution, but half the science teachers I had were like, no, we're not talking about that. That's not true. And I was lucky for that, but it would have been hard if I had to go through that. But there are people there. So maybe you have a great connection, but maybe there's someone who doesn't fit in with the crowd, or someone that that doesn't have that support system. And so that if you do have it, you need to reach out to them and include them in. Because we go to church and we have gatherings like this, which are terrific, and I'm so happy to be a part of. But think about how many people that can't make it because of some other commitment, and think about how much they would get out of it, or people who just were like, nah, not interested, and how sad that is that they don't want to be able to do that. And so when you go and you're young, and I chose to follow the gospel when I was 13. And at that point, it was right before the scriptures had left the congregation. So at one point, I didn't have anything at that point. I had myself, and I was going to school. I didn't really talk about it much, unfortunately. I kind of just did my own thing, and that's sad because you can talk to people, your friends at a young age, and be like, hey, this is what I do, this is what I believe, and you can encourage them to come visit. I really didn't do that. I was kind of intimidated and scared about it. Well, a lot of people will feel that way, especially if you're alone. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about Elijah in 1 Kings 19 in verse 10. So take me for example, because I don't want to talk for anybody else, but I would go to school, I would go Sunday morning, I'd be at church, Wednesday night I'd be at church, but all through the week, I'd go to school, deal with the people at school, have my friends at school, do sports or do other activities or other bands, and I'd be sitting around people that were just not the same as me, who did not believe the same as I did. And even now, I'm older, but it's still the same thing. No matter where I go, that it's tough finding people who think the same way as you do. They might not think exactly the same on doctrinal issues, but just in general, the morality of the people are so much lower. And it can be overwhelming. If we see in verse 10, he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And that's troubling, especially when you're a young kid, where you're even my age. This is one of the few times that I get to talk to people where, I'm on the upper end of the age bracket. But for myself, when going through school, when you do finally stand up for what you believe, and if you finally start addressing it and making it well known, don't expect it to be happily received, is the other thing. It says they want to take my life. It's because you disagree with them. If you haven't noticed, the trend in the world lately is that if you disagree with what they have, they're really tolerant of everybody but you. And that's a problem for us, and it's overwhelming. But this edification and this being there for each other, this is addressed in verse 15. And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall anoint Israel to be king over Syria, and Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha the son of Shaphat of El-Mohala you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. And the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So why is it needed? Well, in one instance, you may be feeling like you're alone. You may be thinking, depending on whatever your circumstances is, whether it's maybe you have a great support group now, but maybe you go and, you move somewhere, or you start a new portion of your life, and all of a sudden you don't have those people. You can feel alone, but the point is that we do have these connections. That it's easier now to have connections than it has been ever before. But we can always be there for each other. And that's important because things can get overwhelming. And I'm so sad that I missed the previous talk on edification and the definition. But I hope that it was mentioned something that edification is not just education, but it is about being spiritually built up. And it's all facets of being built up. And that's the point, that it is a support for you. Building up is a support. And it's, and we think about all the analogies that are used in the Bible. And so many of them talk about the soldier. So many have talked about putting on the armor and fighting the fight. Well, in that time, a soldier was important because a soldier protected the person to his left and his right. And that's what we have to do as well. We can't just be concerned with ourselves, but we need to be helping those to our left and our right, because as much as it is an independent walk, we need encouragement, and people struggle all the time. Also, I'm sure I've heard that we talked about this before in the previous lesson, but it means to set a foundation for our beliefs. Edification is from the Latin word to build up, or the Greek, whichever you prefer. It's a handful of words, but that's not the importance as much as it is the fact that it comes from the building up. So what are we building up? Have you ever thought about that? What are we encouraging each other and building each other up with? Well, when I had to take philosophy, it was a pretty interesting class. I appreciated the teacher I had because he definitely did not force any ideals upon you, but let you say, do you know why you believe what you believe? And if you do, if you can defend it, then you know what you're talking about, And that's one of the problems that we have, is that so in philosophy, their idea is, we're going to tear you down, and we're going to rebuild why you believe what you believe. And there's a bunch of different, philosophers who go through this process. It basically starts with Plato, this idea of tearing down and building up. But this is important for us as well. I was talking to Heath about it earlier last night. Talking about why do we believe what we believe? That's important. And the fact that, if we don't know, if we just say, oh, well, we do, that gives a door for temptation to creep in and to be able, we're like the house built on sand, because we don't have a foundation. If we don't have a foundation, if we don't know why we believe what we believe, then we're going to fall, because we cannot stand up to the scrutiny that the world puts on us if we don't know. There are reasons. There are plenty of reasons. I know that we had a whole week of it this year, of why we believe what we believe. But if we don't know those, and we don't come together and establish those and build each other up in why we believe what we believe, we will fall. And that is just sad and terrible. And it's great because, we're not expected to have a blind faith. We've been told all kinds of things. And John 20 is an example. John 20 and verse 30. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. This is just one of the examples of us being told, there's a reason for all this. You can find it. If we think about nature and how complex nature is and how it must have a creator, that things can't just happen randomly. If you actually sit down and look at it, I once heard about that. Science was originally developed to be able to understand man's limitations, to give glory to God. That they wanted to understand why humans can only go so far, and that we can only understand so much because of how amazing God is in his ability to create. And that's what we need to think about. We talk about how science and the Bible work together so often. But yet, we need to understand that we're not just sitting there blindly saying, well, that's what you say. And, you can question them. You can say, you need to be prepared with the answers that they're going to ask. And you need to come together and you need to share that information. You need to build each other up and encourage each other that you are doing what is right. And it's good peer pressure. So then I was given this topic, and when I was sent the email, we have this very long title on the top, which was shortened in the beginning: Why it is needed and its purpose in the church. So this one I found very interesting. I've been doing a lot of talking lately now because I've been taking some time off school, and I've been preaching a lot on Sundays. And for a while, this was one of the big things for me. Is what are we doing when we come together? As the church, what are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? So the question I ask is, why do we come together and worship on Sundays? Why Sundays? Well, it's easy. We're commanded in several places that we need the collection and the Lord's Supper on Sunday. We need to observe the Lord's Supper, and that is the scriptural time to make the collection. So there is a scriptural reason why we have service on Sundays. There's two facets of it. But if you think about what you do on Sundays, that's not the only item that you partake in together. So why do we do it? Well, that I think is found in 1 Corinthians. So we go and look in 1 Corinthians. This is one of my favorite verses as of late. It says, "What then, brothers? When you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up, or for edification," in some translations. So when we come together on Sunday, everything else we do aside from the Lord's Supper and the collection are supposed to be for edification. Whether it's learning the Word, understanding the Word, or praising each other. I really like this. I really like this verse because it really makes you sit back and think about some of the things that you might do, or some of the things that you might be doing on Sunday morning. Take for example, right now you're all tired. And I applaud that no one's fallen asleep yet, because that's quite impressive since you're all very comfortable. We have one close one over here, I see. But I was sitting there thinking one day, and most of I'm very much musically inclined, and sometimes I would start, I could sing, I knew all the words, knew all the notes. I'd start dozing off, and thinking about other things, and I was thinking, that's not right. Why? It comes so easy to me. I need to be focusing more on it. But that we should think about that for all the things that we do when we come together. That we were talking last night about what makes a great song. Where the words and the music complement the words, and it just really works, rather than mediocre songs. And that's a really big thing for me. Is that finding songs that actually edify you. Whether they are really fun to sing, because that's part of it. But there are some times where you're just sitting there and maybe the song leader picks a song and you're like, man, I can't wait for this to be over. And you've all been there, I know. But what does that say about what is being done? Are you edifying each other with that? Not everybody's blessed with the ability for great song leading. It's okay. It's one of the talents that some people have been given, or you take so many years of music and you've prepared for it. And some people are just really trying it out for the first time, and you got to encourage them. You got to do what you can. If the guy's got to sing falsetto to try to keep the pace moving, it happens. But you want to be able to spend that time together, meaningfully. You don't just sit there and go, all right, well, I don't. Or when you don't know a song and you mumble through it, and that pains me. I hate that. That's because not if everybody doesn't know it, then what's the point? What's the point of singing it if some people are just sitting there like, it doesn't have the same effect. You want to try to find things that will work together. And the same with when men go up for the Lord's Supper and they have something to say. When now that I've been doing talking on a regular basis, I told him, I said, sometimes I'm not going to be going 45 to 30 minutes. I said, I have some ideas, I have some information. If I get through it and we have some time left, I'm not going to waste your time. And an older man came up to me, since almost everybody in the congregation is older than me. He came up to me and he's like, I understand what you're saying. He said, I've sat and listened to a sermon, for 50 minutes. That was a 50-minute waste of my time. That it doesn't matter, if you're going to do something, have a purpose, have a reason for doing it. Whether it's 10 minutes or it's 50 minutes. As long as you make that time valuable, as long as you use it and put it to good use. 20 minutes, a young kid learning how to talk for the first time, he's not going to be speaking for an hour. He can, but you're not going to get any benefit out of it. You need to encourage him that I can talk about a lot of things up here for an hour. I don't think you want to, but that's not the point, is it? It's the point of getting the message across, and then you develop, how to develop it, and how to, put it together, and to make other points to connect to it. So when you take that time, you really want to use it to the best. There's only a few amount of times that we do get to come together. This is a special occasion. But if you think you go back home, even for a gospel meeting, think about how much little time you have together. You have an extra hour 4 days out of the week. But that's nothing in comparison to the whole week. Now think back to that young kid. The young kid who's by himself, growing up, him or herself, growing up. They get 2 hours a week of good communication and good connections and edification, while the rest of their week is filled with worldliness. And so its purpose in the church. Well, I'd like to look at what is the church? What is the group, the church? Because it's not the building, It's a group of people. It's a collection of sisters and brethren. It's a group that comes together to serve a purpose. And they're striving to do the Lord's will. We all have this book. We all have this guideline of what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do things. So we have that. Well, what about us coming together? Because with this book, if it didn't say we had to come together, you would think that, everybody's responsible for themselves, and it's basically an every man for themselves, so here's your book, and good luck, I think back to when I was in Boy Scouts, that was kind of the attitude for a while, You show up to the meetings if you need to, but if you can get it done on your own, that's fine too. We don't mind. And, we'll find a way to make everything work, but that's not how this is. We're supposed to come together. Well, in 1 Corinthians 14, it says we're supposed to come together to edify each other. So what does that say about who the church is or its purpose in the church? Well, if we come together as a group of people and our goal is to get to heaven and to edify each other, then what does that say about the purpose in the church? Edification should be one of the highest purposes and one of the main purposes of us gathering together as a church. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. We would come together and we would take part of the Lord's Supper, we'd give in communion and then go. That's it. That's the only reason why, we must come together. But everything else is up to us to make it worth the time. And I think that's important for us to think about. We're making use of this time. And it's not just, this me talking, but us spending time together, us getting out of the world, taking time away from the world, and that's great. So we have some applications, and I was thinking about this. So what? So that's one of my favorite things is I could stand up here talking, about anything, but what's the point? What is the purpose? Why do we have this topic? Why do we need to know why it's needed? Why do we need to know what its purpose is in the church? Well, the first thing is, worship service hours shouldn't be the only time that we edify each other. It's only 2 hours a week, sometimes more, depending on what the schedule is for your congregation's meeting time. Think about that. 2 hours out of the week is the only time you spend edifying each other. What does that say about your priorities? We're considered a family in Christ, and we should encourage each other daily. Whatever it is. My congregation is, a little difficult because we are the closest ones who live near the church building. We're 5 minutes away, but we have people driving an hour and a half, 40 minutes just to come together. Are we taking time? Are we remembering them and those people during the rest of the week. That's important. We have two elderly ladies who are both 100 years old, and they struggle finding a ride to come there. But we make sure that we call them up, we see how they're doing. We do our best to try to get them there if we can, and we found a way that we can provide the lessons for them as well, so they can be built up. Are we doing that with other people as well, though? Or say people who are not, that you notice are, starting to miss, on a frequent basis. Are we saying, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Because that's important. We should seek to spend time together. One of the big things is, sliding in at the last minute and then sneaking out as soon as it's over. I understand that people have a busy schedule and that sometimes you can't avoid it. But, what does it say when every week, it doesn't matter what you have going on, that as soon as the prayer closes, you're nowhere to be seen? Why are you there? Why are you together? The worship service has ended, but you're still gathering together and talking to each other. And finding time outside of worship services. I think this is important for us. I know that every Wednesday before Bible class, I drive my grandma to Panera Bread to spend time with all the other old ladies, because they want to be able to have dinner, before, and talk about everything, knitting. I don't know what all old ladies talk about really, but mostly knitting, I think. So they have this time, they spend it together, and they're the best of friends. And whenever something's going on in their lives, they all know about it. And that's great. And we need to be doing that with other people, Spend time talking to someone you may not want to talk to. I know that you all know me pretty well, from the 1 week a year. And you view me as this great outgoing guy. And then the more you talk to me, you realize I can be pretty crazy. But for a lot of times, I'm pretty quiet and reserved. Surprisingly, in large situations where I don't know that many people, I'll just sit back and listen. And it's sometimes, or if there's visitors, I'm not, that's one thing I struggle with, is going and introducing myself, because I'm like, I really don't want to do that. I don't know you, but you need to do those things. And I understand, and I'm sure a lot of you guys feel that way. You'll be like, my friend's over there, and I'd rather talk to them. It's okay, it happens. But, you really should spend that time, or, think about the old lady who always comes up to you and talks to you, and, you're really like, that lady, that makes her day. She sees you and she's so encouraged, She's like, oh, that's so great. It's so great to see you today. And, that encourages them, and you should be like, wow, I made someone's day just by being here, and how great is that? I must be that great. But we're family, and if we spend time with one another, we will notice when something starts to go wrong. Maybe it's not obvious. Maybe they're not just not attending, but maybe something seems up. Maybe something seems off, and you're talking to them enough to know when something's going on that they're not telling you. I have a decent habit of being able to determine that, and it gets quite annoying for people. But it's okay, like I'll be like, you okay? No. You okay? No. You okay? Yeah, something's wrong. Okay, well, should have told me the first time. But don't be afraid to keep pestering them when you know something's up. Because as soon as they tell you, or as soon as you figure it out, you'll be able to help them. And that's great. Whatever it is. Whether it's, edifying them, or they have some family distress. Recently I have some family that lives in the Columbus area, and it's my grandfather's brother, and he has Alzheimer's, and he didn't seem to be doing well. And so we were kind of down about it for a little bit, and one of my mom's cousins called and said, oh well, cousin Charlie's doing even worse, and my family was a wreck for a while. But everybody, when we came into church the next day, because it happened to be on a Tuesday and they came on Wednesday, everybody knew and everybody was there to support. Everyone was like, hey, I heard about Cousin Charlie, what, you have any updates? You have, what's going on? And, luckily by Wednesday it found out that the cousin has a little bit of an imagination and it wasn't that bad, which was great, it wasn't bad. But the fact that people were there and, you could say, hey, Cousin Charlie, how's he doing? That's great, Do you think about the people you attend with? Do you know, all the things that are going on? Do you know, if there's any health issues in the family that, maybe go up to them and say, hey, how's so-and-so doing? I've been thinking about him a lot lately. Just small things like that, are great for everybody involved. And so, when I was thinking about edification, when I was thinking about, my life and all the things that I've done, for a while, I was not the happiest kid around, I had my rough times in life. And, things finally started turning around when it was no longer, I finally felt it. It was no longer, my parents forcing me to go every Sunday morning. And, all of a sudden, it was, well, I'm beating them to the building, whether it's because I'm driving really fast or because I left before them. Either one. I mean, to be fair, my mom has a lead foot as well. So I learned from the best. But it's this idea of wanting to go, having to go to wanting to go. Whatever you're doing in life, you think about the fact that, at a young age, your parents are dragging you along. Whether you like it or not, whether you try to fake sick or not, you're getting dragged along. And that's great because, at that time you don't know what's best for you. Most of the time you probably still don't know what's best for you, but it is what it is. You start to learn. But there comes a time when this idea of having to go is no longer good enough. We think about the fact that just because you sit in the pew, just because you listen, just because you sing along, isn't doing it. It's the fact that you want to be there. You all, I'm assuming, want to be here, which is great. If you don't, well, I don't know how you were forced here. Maybe by gunpoint, I'm not sure. But you want to be here. You made it a part, of your schedule, of your busy schedule. We all have busy schedules. I quit my job and started a new one, so I had to do everything I could to get here last night, which was fun. It was what I looked forward to all day, while I was working. And, just to spend time with you guys, to talk to you guys, to be encouraged, to be like, hey, there's others out there that I don't get to see that much. And you want to go, and you want to take that same approach with everything, whether it's the Sunday mornings, the Wednesdays, the gospel meetings, the pitch-ins or potlucks, whichever you prefer, because I know there's a debate about that in some areas. You want to go to those things, not just because of the free food, but you want to spend time together. You want to do those things. That's important. And we need to understand that if you have a choice, and that's the first part of this closing. God's word's special. He is so smart and so prepared for everything that we might face in life. That His word is special because our salvation. If we want to get salvation, if we want to work to it, it's our free will. The Israelites, they had to follow the law. They were forced to follow the law. They had no options. But us, if we decide we're not going to, we know the penalty. But it's on us. It's on us to do His will. I think that's so great that He's so smart that He knows that it's your choice. I've given you a guideline. It's your job to follow it. And it just also shows that how smart He is, that this process of edification, He provides for us in so many ways. And He provided this avenue of edification. That when you're down, that there is this way to be built back up. That you don't have to stay down. And and you guys might feel down sometimes. I felt down a lot before. But if you have people around you, you don't feel down for long. If you have people who care about you, they may not understand, they may not know, but if you surround yourself with those people, at some point they're going to notice, and they're probably going to help pick you up. And finally, as we edify each other to become a tight-knit family, it reaffirms our faith, knowing why we believe what we believe. And that's important. That's important for all of us. That we take this time, to say, go out into the world or, ask about dinosaurs. Well, what about dinosaurs? Don't they contradict the Bible? We have one of the experts right here to give you the answers on that. It's a good thing my mom wasn't here because I would point it to her. She lived during the dinosaur time. But that's important for us. And I think, I really cared about this subject. I think about, what I went through, what I've seen others go through. Most of you don't know my sister, which is sad. She was a pretty awesome person for the time, but I don't see her that much anymore. And it hurts. And it's not fun. And it's not fun to think about or deal with. But I also don't want to have to think that way about any of you. So I've seen what happens. My sister started coming to camp, I think, around 13, 14. At that point, she had already made all these sports friends. She had like 5 boyfriends at the time. So she had already, her mind was already filled with enough that, the good connections weren't ready to be made, and it kills me, and it makes me sad. And every time I try to talk to her, try to encourage her, but, sometimes, those people won't listen, it's too late. But for us, for our opportunity, for us, whether we do have good connections, we need to look out for those people who don't. Or whether we are struggling and we know that we can reach out. That don't be afraid to reach out as well, Don't be afraid to look for someone, you all should have each other's numbers. Maybe not me, because, I talk to very few of you, but it's okay. I have the friends that I do, and I'm quite happy with them. But, I just want you to think about those things. I don't think I spent, oh wow, I impressively spent all 30 minutes. Was not counting on that. We started 2 minutes late, though. So, we're 7 minutes early. But I just thank you so much for this time, and I hope you think about these things. I'm not a big fan of outlines, honestly. So when he asked me to do an outline, I tried my best to give you something that you can think about. Think about the things that I've brought to you today. That when you are down, or when you're thinking, why are we coming together? Why are we doing what we're doing? It's because we're supposed to build each other up. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that none of you fall asleep.